everyone, welcome to Folkscape Live. My name's Alice Jones and I am very honoured to be here to present tonight's special Q&A with the mighty show of hands.
Half of them.
We have one half of show of hands ready, waiting to be questioned. Hi, Steve.
Hi, darling.
Thank you for being here.
Down the corner parking. He's imminent.
Fabulous, fashionably late.
Yeah.
So tonight we are live, so you can ask questions all the way through. And the way that you ask your question to Steve and Phil are to go to Q&A.click, and you can submit your questions live, and we might vet some of them, but we will endeavour to answer all the questions that you have to ask. Are you ready for the onslaught, Steve?
I am indeed.
Fabulous. And this is as by way of letting you all know that Steve and Phil have their final farewell live stream concert going on Folkscape Live. And it's a live broadcast of their concert on the 18th of May, Saturday, from Exeter Cathedral. And it's going to be absolutely magnificent from what I've heard. You've got some special things going on, Steve?
It'll be quite dramatic, quite emotional. It's a cathedral. It's going to be beautifully lit, beautifully filmed. So yeah, I've been rehearsing, getting some special things ready. Obviously, the unicycling is not going to happen down the nave, but everything else is fine.
Brilliant. And you can't get physical tickets anymore because it's sold out, right?
It's sold out. Yeah, they're trying to find spaces for people behind pillars and all this sort of stuff. And obviously, we have a lot of friends and family want to be there for that particular night.
I'm sure. So if you want to be able to see that concert, you're going to have to come to Folkscape Live to get your tickets. So that's folkscape.live on the website. There are tickets there. The virtual doors open at 7 o'clock, but the actual music starts at 7:30. And I believe there's also going to be some exclusive content that you can film, backstage things before you get started.
Yeah, a little sort of like fly on the wall stuff. Not too intimate, I don't think, but yeah, it's going to be a tense day because it's also a functioning cathedral and everything has to stop for evensong. So
Wow.
you have to work around the Lord, which is fair enough. It is his space. So yeah, it's quite a day. It's quite a production. And Jamie Isaacs, our tour manager, who did the Albert Hall show, as you know, has been working non-stop for the last 3 or 4 days.
I bet. And it's not the first time you've performed at Exeter Cathedral either, is it?
No, I think it's the fourth. The most memorable, I think, was with Jim Carter and Imelda Staunton. We did for the centenary of the Battle of the Somme, we had a whole evening of poetry and recitation from 2 incredible actors, and that was quite something in 2016, I think that was.
Amazing.
Oh, we were there with Track Dogs 2 years ago as well, yeah.
Yes, of course. And that was a whole cathedral tour, wasn't it, that you did?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's worth noting as well, if you do get your tickets for the live stream gig on Saturday, it's not just available live, it's available as catch-up and it's available for at least a year on Folkscape Live. So it's worth every penny. So I'd get there and get your tickets. Shall we just get started without Phil?
Why not?
Because so I've got all these questions coming in from the people at home. So if you email Q&A.click, if you write to them, put the question in there, it's going to pop up and I'm going to ask Steve and Phil direct. So the first question that I've got for you is, how did Show of Hands start and did you ever imagine it would have such longevity?
Well, the actual first Show of Hands event was a one-off at Wimborne Festival in about 1986. I'd been booked by friends there and they wanted me to put together a trio. So I put together a little trio with a guy called Martin Bradley and with my old mate Paul Downs. Yeah. And I wanted a name for it. And Phil and I both liked the name and we talked about doing more gigs, although at that time he was playing in the Albion band and Mike Oldfield and lots of stuff. And we thought it would be a collective. We thought if we had a name that could involve lots of people coming and going, like an ensemble or a collective, but then it just became me and him, and obviously more recently Miranda, and it stayed as either the duo format or the trio format. So but I quite like the democratic sound of the name. You know, it's a play on words. There was an American band called Show of Hands at the time, but they sort of soon disappeared.
You got rid of them.
And longevity, you don't know, do you? You just keep getting booked. And then all of a sudden there's another year's worth of work, another year's worth of work, and it stretched out and out and out and out. We thought we thought there'd be a ceiling at maybe 200 or 300 people. We didn't realize we'd get up to 300 or 400 or 500.
I mean, that is amazing. Obviously you start something hoping that it's going to go well, but the sort of audience. Oh, hello.
It's Jones.
All right, beer.
Go away, dog.
Go away, dogs. Yes,
Go
go
away.
away.
Don't sit
No,
down.
not playing.
Sit
How are you
there.
doing?
Lean in. Lean in like that.
Hello, how are you?
I'm all right. I'm good, thank you. Where's your sparkles?
Beer, have a beer.
Pardon?
Oh, there. So where's your sparkles?
I've got my new Phil Beer t-shirt there.
Oh, nice. Take it easy. And you have.
Indeed. Carry on, chaps. Don't mind.
Steve and I were just talking about the start of Show of Hands and the idea behind not expecting the longevity that you've had.
Yeah.
And I was just saying that obviously you set off kind of wanting it to go places, but you never quite know where it's going to go. And clearly, audience development has been a huge part of how you've got to where you are now. You've got this unique audience that are your audience. And I just wondered if that was an aim from the beginning. Was that always the vision?
No, there was no coherent vision.
Just another gig, wasn't it?
Steve has made a joke all tour about thinking as he was moving back to the West Country from doing the London thing, he was sort of thinking, okay, well, and I mean, if I hadn't been playing the Wimbledon Folk Festival at the same time as he had a one-off gig.
Yeah, just meant, yeah, that's
Oh,
right.
you just mentioned that, yeah.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
The idea would never have occurred, and of course, Steve had that name because he was using it for that trio gig with
Martin and Paul.
Martin and Paul? No, Warwick.
Martin and Warwick. Yeah,
Martin and Warwick.
Right, yeah.
So that's where that all came from, basically, and and we haven't looked forward since.
We haven't looked up since.
No, there was just a series of processes. There was a local agent where Steve was living in Dorset, Peter Wilson. He's still around, and he started getting lots of little gigs for us. And that's where the whole beat about the bush thing comes from. Back to the old-fashioned idea that in order to get noticed by anyone or do anything, you just do a million gigs, and that there is no other avenue. Steve had already tried all the avenues, and he had put his shoulder to a lot of doors, met a lot of very nice people.
Yeah, managers, publishers, the whole rock and roll demo thing.
Yeah,
it hadn't worked. So,
but it ultimately hadn't kind of delivered anything. So this was a much more relaxed and sort of organic approach to doing things.
When I went professional in '94, I had to replace my part-time teaching income, which was £500 a month.
Yeah.
So we had enough gigs to replace that, and I knew I could survive. So that's sort of how it began.
Indeed, and that's really all there is to it. I mean, without getting too political or too sort of overbearing, the only two times that we've ever interfaced with the actual mainstream music industry have been unmitigated disasters, and not on our part. So, and here we are.
Yeah, well, here we are at the final gig of the whole tour and the final gig of Show of Hands. And like I said earlier on, if you weren't watching right at the start, you can buy your tickets to the live stream, which is coming live from Exeter Cathedral on Saturday, the 18th of May, and you can get them from folkscape.live. And that will be virtual doors opening at 7. We hope a bit of exclusive content, behind the scenes type stuff, and then the music will start at 7:30 p.m. So do get your tickets because you can't buy physical tickets anymore, and it's going to be an absolute extravaganza. We've got loads of questions for you, so I'm going to get on and ask some of these questions. We've got a question from Pauline who says, and it's not my mum, it's a different Pauline. Will you be continuing Hands on TV after this year so that your fans can still get an online show of hands fix now that we can no longer see you live? And she also says, many thanks for all your music.
Yes, indeed. Hopefully people, as I say, there's so much stuff up there and I'll keep feeding content onto it. And yeah, that will be certainly going on.
Fabulous. Caroline Gurney says, what is the most unusual instrument that you have played? And I'll ask Phil first.
The most unusual instrument. Like so many people at the time, I was absolutely captivated by Kuda and the Cuban thing, and especially it was as everyone knows, it was a mixture of people who hadn't played music for 40 years, and then as it got going, they acquired one or two Cuban absolute master musicians like Bernardo Torres, who is probably still is considered Cuba's greatest Cuban lute player. Loud, that's the loud, the LAUD, which is another instrument with kind of Hispanic origins. And I was very captivated by that. And in fact, our old friend Mick Birch bought one back when he went to Cuba. And I sort of bashed that around. And then I gave it to David Oddy. And David made a much more sort of robust version of it, which I'm just restringing at the moment. It takes about 6 weeks.
Wow.
And, only joking. And I shall be using that a lot in recording over the summer, because it kind of it's like a big mandolin and some in terms of the range, you know.
Yeah.
So that's yeah, it's probably the most unusual one I can think of. Yeah.
Yeah. And Steve?
I played an ocarina once.
On stage?
No, do 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 do. It's a horrible sound. Didn't they use a wild thing? Paul used to play the Lonesome Boatman on the ocarina. No, to be honest, I imagine, although it's so familiar to us now, the Quatra, because when we first came out across that was totally unique, and that's a sound that we very much made part of our whole landscape, really. But nothing. No, I mean, I can only play standard shapes on stringed instruments. I can't do keyboardy stuff or anything like that. So yeah, I meant say the Quattro.
Fabulous. Jane Walton says to each of you, which of your huge song catalogue is your all-time favourite song?
Oh,
well, that's for me. That's obvious, because the song that triggered it was Exile. That was the standout song in the set that he did that day at Wimbledon with
wow.
Captain and Warwick, you know.
Yeah.
And of course, it's a story that just regenerates itself anyway, you know. And it's a song about observing, you know, stateless people stumping up in the UK, looking for safe haven and so on. I'm not going to use any of the words that people now use to describe some of these people, because it's bollocks anyway. So,
beep.
B word. Yeah, I think and still think that it's just a superb song by anybody's standards.
And talking of full circle, it's a recurring theme as well, isn't it?
But it's been in the set virtually all the way through.
I don't have one. I always say, in order to write songs, you have to think that the newest one is the best ever. There's a good chance it's not. Could be the worst, but you have to commit to it. So at the moment, I'm enjoying playing the dive. I enjoy playing the ride. I like the ones that have a big poetic hinterland.
Yeah.
But Tom Robinson gave me some good advice. He told me to start singing my songs like they're somebody else's.
Oh, wow, that's very profound. Yeah.
Because I noticed that I was sort of committing to a couple of songs that were covers and being a bit matter of fact about mine and a bit prosaic. So I am going to do that. And then I might have like another insight into them, you know. On the Dire Straits, I do Romeo and Juliet. I love singing that line. All I do is kiss you through the bars of a rhyme, you know. And I've probably got lines like that of my own that I don't maybe respect as much because it's so familiar. So
yeah,
it's not really an answer to that, Wendy Jane, because the last one I wrote is always my favorite, or the next one.
Good answer.
Can I just chip in before Steve mentioned the ocarina?
Oh yeah.
Thing. Can I just say that we have performed Wild Thing in Canada with its writer, Chip Taylor. I thank you.
Oh, wow. That's career highlight then.
Yep.
Yeah.
What's the other one? Oh, that's right. Steve always liked the Hurdy-Gurdy Man, and we sang that with Donovan at Midem in southern France once.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's all right. Well, and a sort of a related question then, if which of your songs can be the biggest earworm then, Steve?
Again, don't know. I don't know. That's up to people to judge, really.
Yeah.
People come up and say, I can't get that bloody song out of my mind. So that's not for me to judge. You'd like to think that there are a few, but often it's ones that if people like to hear them at sound check, they hear them at the show, or they have got maybe a recording. It's really surprising to me which ones have engaged people the most. But again, that's not my judge to say, but hopefully a lot of them.
Interesting thing has happened on this tour. Probably on aggregate, the most requested song has been The Galway Farmer, and I'm surprised this time round, where we quite deliberately haven't included it in the set, how few people have asked for it. There have been very few sort of angry Voltons or anything like that. You didn't do The Galway Farmer. So maybe finally it's run its course.
The earworms tend to be the chorus songs anyway. Things like Best One, they tend to be the ones where you've repeated a riff or a chorus line. So yeah, we're not doing many of them on this tour, but as I say, it's up, people can tell me.
I must say, my answer to that question is Cousin Jack. That will stick with me for months at a time.
Possibly the biggest song we've got in terms of its engagement with more people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had all the surviving, they're all the same age as me. The Cornish cousins were all there at the Minute last weekend, so it's always especially poignant when they're there, basically. So
yeah,
they always go a bit sort of bleary-eyed when that one comes out.
Yeah, I'm sure it's anthemic. It's anthemic. Related to the, so you've obviously you're coming to the end of the tour. So Martin Wilcox has asked, how surprised have you been by the audience reaction to the Full Circle tour, and does that bode well for an epic, triumphant reunion tour in a few years' time?
That would be a bit cynical. I can't think of any other people that would do anything like that. Oh, yes, I can. But
everyone.
Look, to be honest, it's been quite emotional for a lot of people. We're not very sentimental people, particularly. I mean, we just do our job. But people have been coming up and saying we've been part of their lives. Some people are saying they weren't even born when they heard us first. It's been non-stop great feedback all the way. You know, I must say. So, were we surprised by that? You hope for that. You hope for that. And you assumed it would be like that, and it's ticked all those expectations, I must admit.
That's I must say, being at the last Costa Festival gig that you did, that was really emotional, but it was a lot of happiness, and several people came over to tell me that, like you said, that they'd known you the whole time, and that it was really kind of like saying goodbye to some friends, you know, that
taking a dog to the vet.
Nobody quite put it like that. Also, Erica has asked, have you estimated how many people will have watched the Full Circle tour? We've got those lots of stats yet?
No, we haven't even thought about that. I mean, don't forget, a lot of the earlier gigs were very small. Don't forget.
75 gigs. I suppose it averages about 200 a night once you add the big ones. So
that's a gig as small as 80 people, which is all the place holds. And then obviously we've got 1,000 people in the cathedral coming up on Saturday, and so on. I guess we probably ought to try and, well, we would know. We are actually pretty much able to work it out. It just occurred to me to do it.
We didn't go for the biggest venues. We went back to the right back to our roots. So it wasn't about maximising.
What has been immensely gratifying in the early days, like everyone else, when we weren't getting enough gigs, and especially in company with Gerardo Farrell, who was kind of managing the affair. So we created a whole bunch of gigs and empowered, if you like, people who said, you never play around where we are. I said, so put on a gig, get a village hall, do it. Some of those people are still doing it, and that's marvelous.
I've definitely had gigs from some of those people, and they tell me that. They say the reason why I've done this is, yeah, because of a show of hands gig.
Yeah.
I'm surprised how many actually,
Yeah.
and I'm surprised of how many venues we've made available for so many people as well, by this model of working not for great big fat fees, but for a percentage of what the promoter makes. So nobody's losing money.
Yeah.
You know, except us sometimes.
Well, yeah. There you go. Yeah, and again, but very gratifying. Right in the very beginning, I had a strong relationship with the folks who used to run the Bournemouth Folk Club. They stopped running it more than 20, 22 years ago, but they occasionally all get together and run a lovely village hall gig just outside Bournemouth. So it was fantastic to connect with them and do their gig, you know.
Yeah.
And I see them socially maybe once every 2 years, you know, because they're sailing people as well. But that was very gratifying to know that they're still kind of, shall we run a gig? Yeah, who shall we hear? And just a very, very nice idea.
Are we falling behind lots of questions, Alice? Do we need to keep the pace up?
It would be good to do that. There's I've got a couple of questions here from Ernie and Mary. I don't know if you know an Ernie and Mary.
Ernie,
you do, right? Well, that explains a lot because they've asked 3 questions. What is the smartest thing that Phil has ever done?
To me,
I'm assuming so.
I think setting up the structure of a mailing list and insisting on our own PA from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Really, that was a game changer, I think, because we have always it's a bit odd because we're not, shall we say, we're industrious, but we're not always the most thorough people. We've never done a bad gig, and we've always insisted on the best sound.
Yeah.
And that was always it. We could have said, oh, there's a PA there, there's a sound engineer. And we always say to people, invest in your sound, you know, invest.
Yeah, and the production sets you apart. Yeah.
That's what you're selling. You're selling that oral and visual experience. So a lot of people, quite well-known bands, are content to take a potluck on someone with no experience of their sound, plugging in lots of leads, and the audience are paying. They don't know that, you know. They just want good sound. So that was very much him from the very, very beginning.
Yeah.
I'll give a hard example of that. I mean, years ago, donkeys years ago, absolutely no names, but a superb band of a Celtic style persuasion, all of whom are friends, and one of them is a very good friend. But at a festival, complex music, very complex music, 5-piece band, and the house engineer is by no means incompetent, but it was one of those things that just turned into a disaster because they're expecting the triangle on the 10th bar of whatever to be audible, and the poor old house sound engineer has never heard this band in his life, and he's doing his best, you know, and there were sort of just grim faces and arguments, and they'd had a terrible gig. If they had come with their own sound engineer who actually knew their music, how complex it was and what had to be woven in and out of things, it would have been an infinitely better gig, and just, you know, everything a better. Oh no, we can't afford.
I also think there's an inverse proportion between the number of DI boxes you want and how often you use them. You know, you've got people with the DI box to play one chord on one instrument halfway towards the end, and it's like, we've always gone for simplicity and always tried to give the engineers an easier setup as possible. Yeah. And engineers, they don't care what you sound like, but they like you if you give them an easy life.
Absolutely. And it's worked, you know, you've consistent production and people know what they're going to get when they come to your gigs, no matter what the venue is. And it's which isn't always the case for some venues or bands. I've got another question from Ernie and Mary. What was the funniest moment with Phil on stage?
The Santiago moment.
Oh.
Festival in Belgium when I lost my voice on the first verse. And I was Santiago, let's go. And I went over to Phil and I said, can you do the second verse? And he went, yeah. And he walked up to the mic and he went, we bought and we've been playing it for 15 years and still playing. He walked back to me and went, apparently not.
Oh, no.
I just absolutely fell on the floor. Absolutely. I was tearful with laughter just at the time an old lady in the front row collapsed.
Oh,
And
what?
everybody was fussing around her. And
then,
all they saw was us turning, seeing this lady dying with laughter. It's not funny. It's not funny. She's not well. It was like, but yeah, I think Phil's autobiography should be called Apparently Not.
apparently not.
Get it
And
written.
another one was one does, as you know, as an accomplished performer, but occasionally even a song you've been singing for years, you forget.
Yeah.
You know, suddenly you're in another world. You know, you've just gone through the Stargate or whatever. And
Not the suitcase moment.
no, not the suitcase, although that's pretty funny. There's lots of them. But he started singing Ralph's The Setting. And the opening line is, I'll never forget.
No, yeah, also I went on, rather than thinking me with your, I sang me in your suitcase, like, I'm in the suitcase, get out, suitcase. I'm not going out.
Sorry.
Corpsing is
Yeah.
great fun, but it's not very kind to the audience.
Well,
Yeah.
it's not the intention, but it happens.
I had to go off stage once at the Sidmouth Arena. I was one of the many guests backing up lovely dear old Chris Sugden, who's just died, doing his proverbial thing. And he was one of the cleverest and funniest people I have ever known.
Mm.
I won't go into the complexity of the stories he was weaving, but I've been laughing for about 5 minutes, and it's like, make him stop. And then it finally reached a stage where I just had to walk off stage. I was crying, incoherent with laughter, as Chris expanded the tale he was telling, and so on and so.
Right, we better crack through these, Alice.
Yes, right. So next question is, will it take some time to get used to not playing together?
No, next.
No. I thought that might be a short answer. This also may be a short answer. Martin Wilcox says, who will get custody of the Quatra?
We got a 2 or 3, so we'll all
Actually, I'm afraid we got more than 2 or 3.
yeah.
The absolute original, the first one that was copied from one that Mauricio gave us, in fact, which was one that was made in Santiago in Chile. The first one, he left it on top of the car one night and drove off. It flew off and got smashed, and a policeman got in touch about 24 hours later. So, Mr. Knightley, there's a ukulele here or something. We believe it may be yours. And he returned the splintered remains of the first Quattro, which David, of course, with his customary sort of then glued back together. So that's on my wall at home. Oh, there's at least 4 of them, if not possibly 5. And I think we get as well.
Miranda's got one,
Miranda's
yeah.
got one as
Oh,
well.
and Rob Waite found an Ashworth. Oh, I told you that.
Yeah,
move on.
right. Well, there you go.
Well stocked then with Quattros.
Yeah.
Diane Lego says, reflecting of your career together, is there anything you would have changed?
Gosh.
If only we'd had someone who could play the harmonium and sing and dance. That'd have been good, wouldn't it? Can you think of anyone?
Yeah.
No, we'll have to think about that.
That's quite a deep question, actually, really. As Phil said, we've been drawn into the mainstream world a few times. We released a song called Crazy Boys, a single. We tried to get everybody to buy it as a hard copy on that first day, hoping it would chart. And then, of course, the distributor said, oh, they have to order £25 worth of stuff for it to count.
Yeah.
So every time you try and engage with the machine, it comes back to bite you, really.
Yeah, some stupidity standing in the way.
There's always you get drawn in, you know, you've got a radio friendly thing, blah blah blah. But no, on the whole, I think we've no.
But we have been on farming today.
Andrew Marr.
You know, we've had a lot of non-musical television, which is very, very.
I think if we were to structure the career again, we'd probably be less available for more of the year, because we do so many shows that we never quite moved into the sort of 800 to 1,000 seater for the big autumn tour, because we were doing festivals all summer, duo tours, village halls. So maybe you could be a bit more managerial about that and structure a career. But we needed to earn a living, and we've enjoyed going and do it. So I think one thing we've never done is seen it as a league table. There are some people who want to be in Division One, or they were once, and they're forever thread up. They're now in the Beezer Homes Division South. We'll do the Albert Hall one night and the Village Hall the next. And if you don't see it like that, you're never frustrated or disappointed. It's just a show, And
yeah, the original, when we did the first one, the Hole to the Hall, was absolutely what it was. It was a lovely pub run by some people we know in Bedminster, in Bristol, called the Hole. The Albert. So the gig was called the Albert Hole, and we did it the night before. That was our warm up, from the Hole to the Hall.
Yeah. So overall, no regrets, or no huge regrets.
they're not worth having, to be
Not
honest.
really.
I mean, they don't. What good is that? So if you don't use that language, I suggest.
Yeah. I'm going to take a little marketing break and just say that you still can buy the tickets to the farewell live stream on folkscape.live, and that's on Saturday, the 18th of May. Virtual doors open at 7 p.m. and the music starts at 7:30. So please do that. It will be a magnificent show. And also, we're still taking questions, even though I'm taking a slight while to get through them all. You do the questions via Q&A.click. And we'll answer as many as we possibly can. So, moving on, who were your early musical inspirations, and have they changed over the years?
Easy for me: Martin Carthy, Bob Dylan, Nick Jones, and then later seeing people like Tom Robinson, seeing the acoustic rocking troubadours do solo shows, Niels Lofgren. Seeing people pick up an acoustic guitar, Martin Joseph later on. But in those early days, 14, 15, it's quite easy. That first generation of guitar players, particularly Martin, Nick Jones, Dransfields, and then Bob Dylan in the background for that poetic content,
Yeah, I reckon. I come from a Methodist family, and music featured a lot in it, and I already knew the songs of Sydney Carter. And I won't go into that now because it's a long, rambling story. I only realised in much later in life why my parents liked Sydney Carter so much, and so on. But Lord of the Dance is obvious, but I knew Crow on the Cradle when I was 9 years old, and lots of other of his songs as well. But I think apart from all, my first single, and of course we've all seen the Animals, or what's left of the Animals, over these last couple of weeks. My first ever single was the Animals' "We Gotta Get Out of This Place," in fact. And I particularly liked that. But it was I heard the Davy Graham album. I was 14 years old, and that kind of resonated. This fantastic mixture of blues, and it defined the blues. I didn't know what the blues particularly was until that the names started popping up on that album sleeve and sort of things like that. And then it sort of dawned on me what all the British pop groups were doing, and where all this stuff was coming from. But of course, it kind of had a much more authentic feel with Davy's album because it was all acoustic. Yeah, so and that then I didn't know who Cyril Tawney was. I hadn't got a clue, but I heard the song Sally, and then of course, so many years later, all these other things sort of fell into place. And then at the same time, all of my mates were very much into prog rock. I probably saw Yes about 6 times in the early days, and because I worked at Exeter University, and universities then had all these music balls, I must have seen Rory Gallagher 3, maybe 4 times, and he always was absolutely the best thing on the bill. There's no question about that. Saw the Who, still the best Who gig I've ever seen was an old gig at Exeter University, and that was fantastic. And I got to work with Pete Townsend about a year ago on this Reg Muros project, and his memory is remarkable, and he remembers the actual gig. absolutely. He thought it had been a pretty good one as well, you know,
Yeah.
and considering his advanced age, but so far not decrepitude. I'm amazed that he can remember back that far.
We're going to have to do 2-sentence answers now.
Yes, I have a special question as well, a very important question.
You're not going
And I think it's from AJ, who's aged 2 years and 11 months, from
to
what I can see on the screen. What is that dog called?
Pip.
Pip.
That's Pip.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, does Pip want to answer any questions?
Oh.
No. Okay, another question. Mike Hawthorne, how do you achieve the awesome bass thump on the cello mandolin?
Have you missed out a load of questions, Al? Or is it,
I've missed a few out, but I'll
Oh,
go
you
back.
go, okay.
There are ones with names on that I'm
Okay, I've
concentrating
got
on.
an under saddle pickup.
Right.
It's an Ashworth, and it relies on compression under the saddle. And I play with this part of my hand. Phil has a magnetic pickup on his to play leady lines. So if you have a lot of bottom end on the system, not much mid and a bit of top, you get a heartbeat by playing like that with the softed part of your hand. And that's the same on the guitar and on the cello mandolin.
Yes. Paul Morecambe asks, what are Phil's plans for the future?
I'm having a rest next week. I am doing 2 50th anniversary gigs with Paul Downs, one at the Chester Festival coming up very shortly, and then one at Sidmouth. The rest of the time, I shall be in my new studio, beavering away, attempting to collate and finish everything that has not been finished in the last 25 years, and renovating some recordings that go back further than that. Much further, in fact. So that's what I should be doing. There's a few gigs this year, but I won't be open for business again really until next year. So
proper rest. Nice. Okay, Alexander Isambard says, hi both, it was a pleasure to catch you in Pentrick at a cappella.
Yeah, that's right.
I've long held that passion is the most essential quality in a songwriter, and it's being the most direct route to truth. Would you agree? If not, then what would you put in its place?
It was nice to meet up actually at that gig, such a great gig, and good songwriter, this chap himself, actually. My motto always is, what do you know? What do you see? What do you love? And if you stick to that, and it's you speaking, and then commit yourself to it. Really, I totally agree. Passion's all right. It can wear a bit if it's every single song and someone over emotes. So passion can also be very quiet and very, very subdued and very contained. It's not always, it's not all that, but it's got to come from somewhere inside that is actually true to you.
Yeah.
You know.
What's the Ralph? There's a Ralph.
Oh yeah, it's great. This is Alex. Yeah, this is I played a song to Ralph in the early days, and I got into it a bit. I think it was Class of '73, and my goodness, I did all that, that catch in the voice. And he went, yeah, Steve. You were more moved than moving. And I just think that's the tip of the century. I think he was quoting something that his brother said to him, but it is just like, you were more moved than moving. You know, let the words let the music do it. Don't always do that too much.
We've had another really quite important question come in from Claire Knightley. What do you want for dinner?
Sea bass.
Oh, amazing. I don't think that'll make it as far as Halifax, will it? Okay. Martin Haskell says, I was wondering whether you'd ever consider a Show of Hands branded beer. You could call it the Nightly beer. I don't suppose I'm the first person to suggest this.
There have been a couple of.
I've got a bottle downstairs.
Have you?
Yeah, from Moontop.
Yes.
Phil beer. I got the Phil beer.
Yeah.
Actually, a picture of Phil on the bottle.
Yeah.
At Langer, there was a little artisan brewery that used to do special beers for the night, a one-off barrel. So there was a Phil beer barrel there. Yeah, the Woldtop, you mean? Moontop?
Yeah, no, Leela's.
Yeah, Moonbeams, yeah.
Yeah, Moonbeams.
Moonbeams, that's it.
Yeah. What did I say? I think it's
Moontop.
I can't remember now. Someone can find it. Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay.
And I had a discussion with a very old friend years ago who had a microbrewery in Cheltenham, suggesting that we should come up with a Phil beer, light beer, but it never came to anything. So maybe I should explore that again.
Can I do my Mark Radcliffe moment? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Mark and Stuart McConey interviewed us when they did some Radio 2 programs from the Jurassic Coast, and one that was in beer.
Right.
And Mark had said, "Yeah, no, I'm having a beer with Phil Beer in beer. How cool is that?"
Yeah, that was good. That was very fun.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So retirement project, more Phil beer.
Yes,
Beer.
indeed. Absolutely.
Okay. Oh, Chris says, of all the live festivals you've done over the years, which is your favourite or most memorable?
Oh, we could get into trouble though, couldn't we? Because
I guess so.
we are friends with so many people who have put on so many amazing festivals. Shrewsbury is sort of really taken the lead as regards standards of production, I think. So we've had some amazing nights there at Shrewsbury.
We have had some pretty good.
But even some of the ones that are creaking on the edge of health and safety and PA and in the rain, we've had great nights. You know, things like Chicken Stock. I mean, they
Chicken Stock. Nice.
yeah, you know, it's like it's a festival, you know, and if the night is right and people are into it. But you know, I'm patron of Shrewsbury, so I have to say nice things about that. But we've had some
great festival.
We've had some great nights at Towersey. You know, we've had fantastic nights at all of them, to be honest.
I've done my only ever major solo festival gig at Towersey.
Yeah, I did.
Only one I've ever done.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Sidmouth, of course. You know, we've always done that Sunday night at Sidmouth. So,
Wickham, Pete, you see, who's been such a trooper over the years.
Peter Chedley, amazing to us. So it would be unkind to single one out.
Quite right.
Then, I thought you'd like us. We've had some great nights with all of them, to be honest.
Mary says, will you still keep the Show of Hands Facebook and website going to update us on what you're both up to?
Oh, yes, for the moment. Yeah, well, we've both got a coherent solo websites being constructed at the moment. So
yeah, it will need to be the umbrella, won't it?
Yeah. So the Show of Hands website will continue to be maintained. Yeah. And
there's going to be downloads and obviously the links to Folkscape.
All of that will still be there.
And obviously for solo projects, that will possibly be the first port of call before we build our own websites as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. George Barkley says, do you ever wish you'd had a hit? And many thanks for the wonderful music and memories over the years.
I could get profound here. Henry IV says to his son, "Foolish boy, thou seekest the thing that will overwhelm thee," when he tries to lift up his crown. You want that, but you know instinctively that it would probably destroy all of the relationships and all of the world you've created. I mean, would we have gone to some of the places we'd gone to had we had a hit and were financially sort of like flying? We would, but we wouldn't have missed out on those things, you know. And we know some people who have had those moments in their early 20s and spent the next 20 years trying to reinvent themselves. It sort of defined them for a while, you know, and they have to sort of get over it. But on the one hand, you want it, and it's like winning the lottery. It's not going to change my life. Yes, it will. You know, those friends you had, you don't have them anymore because you have to buy them if they want to join them for your company. And so it's a bittersweet thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be nice now. That would be great.
Yeah.
It would be great.
Just a nice little income stream.
Yeah, if it suddenly went crazy, the Galway Farmer suddenly, if you two did the best of Irish folk and the Galway Farmer, and then we could go, you know what, Phil, I'll see you on your yacht.
You're on your yacht. We're on our knees.
Paul W says, when many bands don't seem to be able to keep things going for more than 5 years before musical differences, what is the secret to keeping it up for 30 years? Do you know?
That's partly easy to answer, and people won't like the answer. The answer is, what actually splits up bands in the end is because it's not going anywhere. It's not actually anything to do with the level of music they may be, or their creativity, or any of those things, although those things come into it. It's about the fact that A, not getting enough gigs, B, not getting enough money, time to go somewhere else that might deliver that thing. And that's a hard, cold truth about why seemingly fantastic bands break up.
Yeah, there's slightly different thing for me. We always have nice days, and we every year we rule out more and more people that we don't want to work with or go back to.
Mhm.
We see other people going in exactly the reverse direction. They're working with people that they don't like, going to places that they don't like, playing music that they don't like. So we've always sort of looked back and said, "Oh no, should we do it? No, I don't like that one." Vicky and Amanda will say, "Oh, you've been offered a gig for so and so." We go, "No," because it wasn't a nice day. We don't do a lot of city centre black boxes. We go to nice places. We stay with friends often.
Yeah.
We stay well now in nice hotels. And also, I'd like to think that as the main writer, in a way, I've always tried to vary the palette.
Mhm.
So we've done the folk album, we've done the Americana album. So I'm always throwing things at Phil to so he can play different shapes or different things like that. So it's not like we've done the same repertoire on the same album. So keeping that fresh and having nice days, working with nice people, I think that's the key to it, really. And we still do. Even on this tour, we
Well,
stayed
that
with friends, we stayed with Richard, we stayed with Ernie and Mary. We've had some fine times and some fine wines have been consumed.
And whiskies. And
a related question to that as well. Some fella called Simon Kerr says,
Oh,
"What do
no.
you like? What do you like most about each other?"
Oh, that's difficult. I tell you what, the main thing about Phil, he does not give a toss about reviews, fame or fortune, folk awards. He is gloriously indifferent to all of the bollocks, really. And I get sort of drawn into it a bit, but Phil really is really remarkably uncaring, and also he never gossips about anybody, which is really rare because musicians love to bitch about everybody else, but
Oh, we do, yeah.
he never says a kind word about an unkind word.
Whoops.
Unkind word. And also when it comes to folk award time, I'd be sort of like, "Oh," he said, like, "Oh, do we have to go?"
well, in fact, I didn't go very often. Actually,
Mm.
to be fair, and that's not in any way to denigrate the attempt to sort of raise the game
No,
for
it's
the
fantastic.
whole thing.
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
idea of raising the game is great, but once again, it smacks of competitiveness, and I do not see it as a competition.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree.
yeah, because where there are winners, there are losers, and you know, and I could go into it much more deeply. I think the primary thing about him is simply we have turned out. This is the first time I've ever said this. We have turned out a body of work which is as good as anything that's ever been done. There are so many people up and down the country in folk clubs, making albums, etc., that use Steve's songs, and I think that in itself is a pretty brilliant accolade. So there.
Amazing. Right, we've got about 8 questions left, I think. There's quite a long one here from Sarah. How does it feel to know that your music has provided the soundtrack to so many people's lives? And she's added, "I'm 36 and your music was played at home when I was a child. We listened to it when we travelled. We saw you live at festivals and venues many times throughout our lives. I held my sister's hand as we watched you play at Ed Sidmouth in the last months of her life. It was her last gig. And it feels like your songs and music are intricately woven into our lives. And I'm certain that many other people feel the same." So the
Well,
question was, how does it feel to know that your music has provided the soundtrack to so many people's lives?
well, what can you say? That's
Uh,
what we've heard all the way through this tour, actually,
Yeah.
to be honest.
Yeah, that kind
Yeah.
of phraseology has cropped up a number of times.
Yeah,
on
and
this tour,
it always sort of takes you aback, and then you take it on board and think, well, that's such a lovely thing to say about
It is, yeah.
us just standing there and plinky plonky away. It is a nice thing to say. So, yeah, very much appreciated, Sarah.
And as well, so there's a related question there. So your music means a lot to a lot of people, but what are your go-to songs or artists when you're feeling down or just need to relax?
I don't listen to a lot of stuff. To be honest, I'm not a great listener. I listen to rock and roll. I listen to CDs that sort of come across in our world. And if I go back, if I'm driving, I'll put on Brothers in Arms, or I'll put on Thin Lizzy.
I love Thin Lizzy.
Yeah, or to be honest, if I really, really want a psychotic rock and roll moment, I'll play Martin Carthy's famous flower of Serving Men at
Nice.
massive volume. And it never stops when the dove comes through the woods. It never stops to make all my hair stand on end, you know. So
Yeah.
that's what I do. I go back to classic stuff, bit of Jethro, Minstrel in the Gallery,
Yeah.
anything like it, a bit of David Bowie.
Mm.
Occasionally, it might be Cardiff Bay, or it might be a Tom Robinson thing, or it would be people that either I've met and whose body of work I've absorbed, or stuff that goes back to the early teen days.
I've
Mm.
got a lot
Phil?
of vinyl, and I often encounter albums that I knew 45 years ago for obvious reasons. That's, you know, that's just what happens. So I will buy them if they're clean, take them home. I've got a good record deck. And so that kind of thing happens. But mostly I let stuff occur. So I came back from Cromer, which I guess our last folk festival. And I discovered we got 4 albums to listen to, you know, one of which I was on, which is of course the Gareth Turner, Simon Kerr, last bash, as it were. But the other 3 are all from different people. And tonight, I mean, I've got to get back straight home after this. I will be putting at least 2 of those albums on, and so for me, it's quite an organic occurrence.
Yeah.
We used to put a lot of store on being guided by Bob Harris and the late night Saturday shows, driving home from a gig or driving to a hotel. On would go Bob Harris. And I mean, I've actually had this discussion with him. It's not that I like everything he plays, I most certainly don't. But on every single show, there was something that you had not heard before, heard of,
Yeah.
quite relatively obscure, that made you sit up and go,
that Boss Skaggs.
Boss Skaggs.
Ain't gonna drive no more. That's stopped the car for me. I've got 3 favourite lines. The Dylan one, I was so much older then, I'm so much younger now. I love that. I love that all I do is kiss you through the bars of a rhyme from Romeo and Juliet. And I love Tom Robinson's, his inner life ticked on like an unexploded bomb waiting for its moment. I just think that's a great bit of writing.
And that is David Barley asked that question. What your favourite lines by another artist?
Oh, sorry, I preempted that.
I thought you'd read it, to be honest. Phil, have you got an answer?
Well, yeah. So what have we just been talking? Our hands and mescal, sweet perfume. Didn't take long to get her in the back room. Yeah, and work down at the car wash where all it ever does is rain. Yeah, there could be love. I love the understated irony in my favorite traditional song, which is a Jew, Sweet Lovely Nancy. The whole thing is the most understatedly ironic. On the ocean wide, where we must bide like jolly sailors all.
Yeah.
That's absolute subtle irony, you know. It wasn't a very nice place. Napoleon was shooting at you. You were being bullied by your officers, and all the rest of it. On the ocean wide, where we must be like jolly sailors all. It wasn't jolly.
I also like in Famous Flower, Martin probably wrote that the ladies stretch their eyes and smile when he rides into court and he takes her up on the horse. Yeah, lovely stuff.
Yeah. Right, well, down to our last few. When writing a folk song, Janice Eglin's asking this, when writing a folk song, what makes a good song?
Well, I don't say, for me, a folk song is a traditional song, but it can have folk. It would be called a folk song if it's played with a guitar, but I think it has to be about ordinary people facing change, uncertainty, whether it's migration, drifting to the city, whatever, warfare, and it has to be understated, and then it has to have a poetic hinterland where the original meaning is suddenly so much greater than what you thought. So that's for me is the essence of a great folk song. Yeah, it's got to have that other ways of interpreting it behind the scene, the subtext of it, like that. And yeah, that's for me the essence of that.
Janice also asks, what will you both miss about performing together?
Well, it's not as if we're not going to. It's just that we won't be touring. I, for one, have enough to do for this year. But for instance, I mean, there are certain very small key gigs that are never advertised. Okay, and we will that will be very occasionally business as usual. And I don't know.
I think I got one. But if the answer is touring together, I will miss is the crew.
We have
You've got a good crew.
I will miss the hanging out with all the guys and girls that we the Naomis, the Robs, the Jamies, the Chris's. Too numerous to name. We've had such fun with the crew. There are some artists that don't really let them crew into their world as regards the material, as regards the good times and the bad times. We share everything with our gang, and they go the extra mile, way back to the early days of Jared, and Chris as well. Sure. It has to be said. So they've always gone the extra mile for us because they see us as part of their family, maybe. So I will miss that from a touring point of view.
We've just had a little comment in here. B Knightley.
The sister,
says, even Chris Martin's dad said to me yesterday that he's in awe that Show of Hands have been going longer than his son's band.
Anthony is a local gentleman, and he said to me, well, Christopher's rather busy at the moment. Yeah, Christopher, I think he's got a show. Yeah, you're talking about 100,000 in LA. So he's coming to...
That's difference.
That's nice. Is that Robbie? Oh, not Robbie Jones.
There's a Robbie K. Jones question here. I don't know if you know that fella. And he says, fill in the blank. You're never going to forget.
Oh. No, that's an earworm. That's an ear maggot, that song. No, we always have a joke with the guys, whenever we're sitting on some veranda supping a fine wine with the sunset, just one song.
Just one song.
To get away from all this squalor and degradation,
He does say, joking aside, what is one of the biggest things you take away from this career?
Friendships made, and I include obviously Robbie in the gang.
A lot of friends.
A lot of friends. My old man, I've said this on stage, he said something that you don't really make friends after your 20s. You don't have the time to invest the hours, but you do in music. We've made friends even in the last couple of years. The places we stay, like Ernie and Mary, whatever, Richard, all of these safe houses.
Other musicians.
Yeah.
Steve's mentioned like Tom Robinson as a good mate.
Yeah.
Johnny Kelsey. You could probably now produce a list.
Yeah.
As long as this beard hair. No, as long as my arm.
The thing is, you don't have. You have to be on your road. On the road, you cannot hide your nature. You get down to ground zero. I suppose you do in any working relationship, but particularly touring and playing music, it's so intense. If you get on with people, you get on with them well, and if you don't, you don't straight away. So, and we've made lots of friends, and that's they're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Are you planning to release the DVD of the final show? Chris and Moo have asked. It would be fantastic to have a permanent keepsake.
Well, it's going to be available for a year through Folkscape. Who knows? At the end of that, that's a discussion to have with David and the Folkscape people. If there's still a demand for it, there might be other ways of marketing it at all. But hopefully, people are going to tune in, and the reputation of the show will grow as they do so. So yeah.
There's one final question, and it's Mary and Ernie again. And they've asked, if there's time to answer, a question to each of you. What's the dumbest thing the other one has done? Is this a leading question? Are they trying to get you to say something?
Oh God!
Well, last night, we were rehearsing with the choir, and we'd already been to Miranda's to rehearse with her in Totnes. So we took Miranda, and then we're going to take her back again before driving back. Well, I'm vehicle. So we drive off from the rehearsal, then he drives back onto the A30.
We were taking her home with us.
Yeah, we're taking her home, and she went, excuse me,
can you take me home, please?
Being kidnapped.
What have I done? Wrong place? No, wrong.
Oh, there's so many, Phil.
Oh, there's so
There's so many. Really.
there are just
Yeah.
there's too many to mention.
Oh, there's lots involving vehicles. I think the dumbest thing we ever did was not put the wheel on the tighten up the wheel on the
bongo.
on the
When you
bongo.
had that bongo, we're driving to London, and we it's kind of cartoon law. You know, you're driving along, and your wheel overtakes you on the inside.
We were trailing sparks all the way.
Yeah.
We're going to Cambridge Festival, in fact.
Oh no.
Had it been a front wheel, we would not be here talking to you right now.
Right.
I thought he tightened it. He thought I tightened it. It was really my responsibility because it was my car. But suddenly, we were overtaken by our own wheel.
Yeah.
And as we pulled through the traffic in about midnight around Bristol, bank holiday traffic, sparks all the way. It's quite funny because the car came to a stop and the wheel just went in front of us and went. And Phil said, "Oh, that's not supposed to happen." And Miranda was in the back. Like this.
That looks familiar.
It's like shaking like a leaf.
A bit of a close shave then.
Wow. Was quite spectacular. Yeah. Dear, dear.
Oh, there's one more comment from Janice, just to say thank you so much for your wonderful music. I've so enjoyed seeing your performances and good luck for the future. And that is...
Sorry, there was one about advice for younger musicians. I think
there was a question, advice for new artists. What would you say?
Well, I would say just play as much as you can, really. If you're playing in an environment that's not a listening environment, play the standards, but chuck your own stuff in unannounced. And just try and get as much work as you can. We know how hard it is for people out there at the moment with the lack of venues, and to try and make a living. But sing about what you know about, and just try and just play as much as you can. That's all I would say. And invest in your sound.
Yeah,
invest in your sound.
Yeah, indeed.
Phil, have you got any advice? Asking for a friend.
Advice for younger musicians. Okay, there is one thing, and it doesn't always work for people, but if you're really serious about it, this is one of the things that worked for us, and that was getting the support to a Ralph tour, because that's absolutely our audience. Initially, that was absolutely our audience. There's no question about that, and we probably saved ourselves a year or two of slog simply by doing that tour. It didn't make money, although we did. That's not true, because we actually sold a reasonable number of albums on the tour. Right. So we survived okay, but it did save us a year, maybe two. Okay, now it's still a tough thing to try and sort of get, but if you can sort of connect your exposure through someone else, and it's a good match of acts, as it were, then that's certainly something that is worth looking at. It's worth investing in.
Yeah, I got into trouble a few years ago because I was sort of saying to people, don't make so many albums. Because we saw so many people investing everything in another 12 songs.
Yeah.
Hoping they'd have a lottery ticket moment which would transform their lives. It's probably not going to happen. And if it does, it will destroy the life that you've built up. So to make the records, you need a body of material, but don't invest so much emotional content in it and neglect the sound and the travel and all those other practical things about playing in front of people, because the chance that next song is going to be the one that opens the doors to this other world are pretty remote, considering there's only Streets of London, First Time Ever I Saw Your Face, and a couple of others that have done it for other English songwriters. So enjoy the day. Enjoy the trip to the newsagent. Don't try and buy too many lottery tickets.
Well, I think we've come to the end of all the questions, and I think we've been going for about an hour now, so probably just wind things up. And just like to say thank you very much for sitting and chatting with us and telling everybody all your experiences.
Yeah, brilliant.
I believe you should do this more often.
Yeah, she could have.
It's rather good.
Except, what's May? She said May.
She might have meant May, yeah.
Do I need a translator?
May. Yeah,
we'll send you a babel fish.
Yeah, who is she? Do you know if you met her?
No, I've never seen her before in my life.
Very good. Very talented.
Thanks. So I think the only thing left to say is get your tickets. It's on the 18th of May. And that's May if you're from somewhere not northern. And they're coming, show of hands, doing their farewell concert from Exeter Cathedral, 18th of May. You can get your tickets from folkscape.live, and the virtual doors open at 7 p.m. There'll be some content there, some backstage things, maybe some chatting from Steve and Phil. Maybe you'll get to see some of the production crew as well. And that will be
tearing their hair,
and getting the hair and makeup done. And that will be available at least on demand for at least 12 months on folkscape.live. And there's no physical tickets left anymore. So if you want to see, it's truly an historical event. This is the last, it's the farewell show of hands, Exeter Cathedral. And it's going to be magnificent. So thank you ever so much, Steve and Phil and Pip. And thanks everybody for watching. And we'll see you again soon, hopefully.
Okay.